All right, are we ready to do this? How is everybody tonight? Wanted to try a little something a little bit different tonight instead of put on the TV. Hello, Andrea. Hello, Tara. Christina, Kelly. Thank you all for tuning in, I guess, a little early. Thought we could get started out instead of once again playing the TV. Hi, Charlie. How are you doing tonight? Instead of playing the TV, I found that some people get a little confused. Like on YouTube, people will tune in and see the TV and they're like, well, what the hell's going on here? And so I decided to switch it up, put a little sign up, very rudimentary, granted. The graphics on Facebook Live are very limited. And then I thought I'd put a little my favorite music to it, something different. We're gonna try to switch it up with the pre-show as the weeks go by, because I want to continue to do that, because if I just come on at 9 o'clock, most people don't start tuning in for a couple minutes, and I just end up sitting here because there's nobody here. So that's why the pre-show exists. Hi, Charlie. Dana Smith, how are you doing tonight? Lois. Diane, under the weather, but happy to be here. You know, I've been feeling a little tired myself. Diane. I've been doing a lot of stuff, but I think it's also my allergies. I've gotten through without the asthma being too bad, but I have felt a little lethargic. I've been taking my Allegra, but I have to tell you that hitting the bed at night has not been very difficult. And I've even I even took a snooze today, this afternoon. I conducted a interview at 3 o'clock Eastern time today, but before that interview, I had to take a little snooze. So thank you, Dana. I appreciate that. Thank you. It's very kind. So I'm feeling a little lethargic, and I can practically guarantee you that after I'm done here, as soon as I get this thing uploaded to YouTube tonight, I'll be going to bed for sure. I'm going to turn that air conditioning down way down cold, and I'm going to bed for sure. But thank you for everybody for tuning in tonight for the Unfound podcast Facebook Live show, or I just like to call it Unfound Live. Jill, welcome tonight. You notice I got a little haircut. Got a haircut yesterday, and Dorothy's there too. Hello. Needed a haircut, got it done. I think it's looking pretty good. So I was really pleased with that. I was due. I hadn't had one since, I don't know, middle of January, something like that. So I was due. And what else is going on? Like I said, fighting my allergies. Let me get my notes out. Did all of you go to triblive.com on Sunday? And of course, it's still up on the website if you want to check it out. To see the article that the disappearance of Tony Lynn McNatt Chiappetta. She was a 14-year-old girl who disappeared in the Pittsburgh area in 1981. I thought the article was excellent. I thought Stephen Huba, the writer, the reporter I'm working with there, did a fantastic job. I complimented him on it. And we are already working on the March, if not the April cases that we're going to be covering. So we try to work ahead a little bit, get in contact with these people. So I've been talking to some people already on the phone and passing those conversations on to Stephen. So we have Kara. Kara, welcome. Melinda and Joyce Rivatuzo. How are you doing tonight, Joyce? Good to see you. So I hope you all went to triblive.com. If you haven't, you can go there now. Just go to triblive.com in the news section. Or you can go to triblive.com and do a search for, I guess you could do a search for Chiappetta, Chiappetta, and find the article. And I would deeply appreciate that if you could do that and take an interest what Trib Total Media is doing with us working together to feature some of these Western Pennsylvania disappearances. And we're going to be doing that all year. In 2018 at least, and we're going to be doing one article a month, most likely always the last Sunday in the month. And the disappearance of Tony Lynn McNatt Chiappetta was the second story that we did. Of course, back in January, we did the disappearance of Amy Pugner, who disappeared in Washington, PA in 2010. I'm glad to hear you're doing well, Joyce. That's good to hear. Thanks for letting me know. So we're going to do a little business tonight, as we always do. I'm going to be talking about a little true crime, missing persons news. Going to be taking any of your questions, so get them in now. I really do. I want to reiterate this. I love answering your questions, whether it's about true crime. As long as it's not, we're not going to talk politics. We're not talking religion. We're not talking anything like that. But we want to talk about writing or anything that's going on that you've seen out there that is fairly non-controversial, that we can add to the discussion. I would deeply appreciate it. When I mean it when I say that I want listeners and viewers questions. So I know that Diane had already asked me, are we going to be talking about Timothy Cunningham tonight? Yes, we are. I think she read my mind on that, and that was the guy that disappeared at Atlanta that works for the CDC. That is going to be in the news section. So I want to give you a heads up on that. But to get the business stuff out of the way, it was interesting to me that a longtime listener of Unfound, and probably a listener who I talk to as much as any listener out there, she said that she didn't realize that Volume 2 was out on Amazon, and I've been talking about it. So I want to reiterate that Volume 1 and 2 are out. They are both in print and ebook form that you can order from Amazon.com. If I've been a little bit unclear on that, or I haven't been talking about that enough, because she listens every week, although she can't, because she's in a different country, she can't watch this Facebook Live show. But I would just want to reiterate that Volume 2 is out there. It's the disappearances of Joshua Guimond, Donnie Smatlack. Let's see if I can do this. Andrea Bowman. Let's see who else. Christopher Hyde, Regina Marie Boss, and Robin Abrams. See, I can do those off the top of my head even. So I hope you will check it out. I really would appreciate if you could do that. And just to go through this, just to remind all of you, here's one. And if you'd like to have a hard copy of Unfound with a signature inside, just contact me either on Facebook or at unfoundpodcast@gmail.com, and we can make that happen. So there's the business of the books. Also, we got makeplayingcards.com. I said I was going to work on them a little bit this last weekend. Didn't get to do that. Just too busy with show things. Of course, I am still working with my business partner. We were doing some things this past weekend. We're getting ready to send some emails out. Actually, an idea that popped up on Facebook, this show live maybe a month ago, talking about SiriusXM Radio and contacting them and seeing if we can maybe start a true crime channel there. That's going to be happening within the next few days, the first contact going on. Megan, hi from Utah. Megan, I don't think that I've seen you on the Unfound live show before, so welcome. If this is your first time, welcome. If it's not your first time, I apologize that I've missed you before. And then Angela, welcome to you as well. But as I was saying, that we're going to be starting to contact some other media companies that Unfound can partner with, get Unfound on their websites, maybe working with some of those other media sites on covering disappearances in their areas. It's something that I think needs to be done. It needs to be spread out, and it'll be good for the show, I believe. And then, of course, the SiriusXM stuff, where I am put together a podcast package with some other true crime hosts. I don't want to mention them right at this second, but I am absolutely sure that most of you have heard of these shows. To give you a hint, some of the hosts have been on Unfound in the past, and got together with them, said I wanted to put together a kind of package to approach SiriusXM, and I figured it out that between all of our shows put together, we have about 40 days of programming, a lot of true crime material, different kinds of shows and different kinds of material covering missing persons, serial killers, kind of conspiracy theories. It's a nice mixture of shows. And that's the package that we're going to be approaching SiriusXM with. Angela, hello. Okay. Nicole is here. Good to see you. And Ann says she is here, I guess, raising her hand. Hello, as in here. And hello right back at you, Ann. And lastly, I want to talk about the T-shirts at myshopify.com. Probably what we call the flagship shirt is a collage of all of the cases in the first year, from Suzanne Lyle to Jennifer Wilkerson. It's a collage on the back of the shirt, all their pictures. And I hope you'll go to unfound-podcast.myshopify.com to check that out. And I've already sent out a couple shirts to some contributors, people who have contributed money to the show. They've gotten a couple free shirts, and for their large contributions. And I'm hoping that they'll take pictures of themselves and put those up in the group or on the page very shortly. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge to those people. I know one of them is actually watching right now because I've seen her name on the list now. So I'm hoping that they will take pictures of themselves so you all can see what that shirt looks like almost in real life. Tammy, welcome. Thank you for joining tonight. How are you doing? Thanks for joining in. So we talked about the books, we talked about the t-shirts, we talked about the playing cards, talked about the work that myself and my partner have been talking about. I have to be honest, I am not the one who is going to be contacting these companies and satellite radio. I just don't have any time. My time is, and Andrea's revealing herself as one of the people who got a shirt. There she is. I'm sorry, I've been sick, not presentable. I'll get it done by this weekend. Okay, Andrea, thank you. You did not have to reveal yourself. I was not going to mention your name. I want you to know that. I appreciate that. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I'm sorry that you've been sick. I was just talking, of course, about my allergies earlier. And, I've kind of felt a little out of it as well. So, Andrea, thank you. But it's going to be my business partner who is going to be contacting these places simply because I don't have the time. Besides putting the weekly program together, working with Trib Total Media, trying to find cases to cover in Western Pennsylvania, talking to people that eventually make it on the actual episodes, just not enough time in the week. And that's exactly why this woman, I'm working with her. She's been a longtime friend of mine. In fact, her birthday's tomorrow. I will have known her 18 years come May. And she's a very close friend of mine, one of my closest friends from my days in Las Vegas. We've been through a lot together. We're very close. And she has some experience in this area, and I asked her about a month and a half ago if she'd be interested in helping me do this, and she was more than eager. She listens to the program. So she is the one that's going to be doing all of that, actually contacting, and she's actually the one that back at the end of last year when one of the TV producers wanted to have a conversation with me. Well, she lives in LA. I just had her go over and talk to this guy in person, and it went very well. So I trust her deeply, and I'm hoping she's a very positive. I tend to be the cynic. She tends to be the positive thinker, and I think that's what this needs. I think what Unfound needs right now, her bringing in that kind of energy to be doing this part of this contacting and everything she's going to be doing. So I'm very excited about that. Yeah, Jill, she's a great friend to have. Totally true. I couldn't have put it better. Just could not have put it better. So I think we work well together. She takes cues from me. I take her advice as well. And so I'm hoping this is going to go well. I'm really hoping. And I think it'll be good for everybody. Viewers, listeners, the guests, all of the missing persons cases, even all the ones that we've already done. I think this could be positive for everybody. So I'll keep you posted as that goes on. And she's excited to be. She has her own things that she does, but she's said more than once how excited she is to be kind of a part of this and taking this responsibility on. So I'm very lucky to have her. And I have to tell you that sometimes I don't work well with others. I'm a little bit of a lone wolf, usually working by myself. That's why I do everything on Unfound, design the shirts, do all of these things. There's no, of course, co-host. There's nobody who writes for the show or anybody like that, although I do have a couple people that find cases for me, and I've talked about them. For example, Emily, I've mentioned her quite a bit. In fact, I talked to Emily on the phone today. But really I work well by myself. And this friend of mine knows that, and so I'm very fortunate to be able to have somebody that realizes the way I am, but can work with me as well. So there's that. So we got all that in. What else do we have going on? That's probably about it. I think I went through most of the business stuff. And I've been playing a little disc golf too. Been finding some time to get out and throw the discs a little bit so I don't embarrass myself like I did a couple weeks ago in a tournament. Let me just do something here very quickly, and then we will get into our first news story. It's going to be a kind of an update, unfortunately. It's not a very happy update either, but we have to cover it simply because we did talk about it on Unfound Live maybe 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And that is the disappearance and, unfortunately, the discovery of Kitty Cat West. I think her real name was Catherine West. She was found, of course, and then probably, unfortunately, her husband is now in custody. The police believe that he is the one that did something to her. She was eventually found, I guess. She had some sort of top on, but no bottoms on. She was out in front of her house lying on the sidewalk or in the street. There was a bottle of alcohol with her, and something had happened. I don't know. I have not heard a cause of death. I don't know if she was strangled, if she was stabbed, if she was shot, but she was deceased. And to remind all of you, this is the woman who had kind of an X-rated site, I guess, R-rated or X-rated pictures, and she was selling them. And there was a video of her at this liquor store with her husband. They looked like they were just playing around back and forth, being very fun with each other. And then not too long after that, she was found dead in the street. And the cops believe that her husband was the one that did it. That I don't know what to think of it right at this time. If you haven't heard about that story, I would urge you to go to Google and update yourself on that. I guess it just shows you how quickly these things can change. I don't know if, obviously they were at the liquor store. You're going to take for granted that alcohol was a factor in this. I guess that makes sense. Either way, it just shows you how quickly something can go where a couple is joking around in a liquor store to the point where the woman is dead and the guy she was joking with on the video is the prime suspect. In fact, he was put in handcuffs and taken to jail. I wonder if we underestimate that when it comes to disappearances. When we hear about a woman, for example, who's disappeared, and you hear, she was getting along with her husband great. She was getting along with her boyfriend great. And then she disappears. And I know that from now on, as I cover cases that maybe are like that, I'm going to think back to the Kitty Cat West case because that just shows you how quickly things can turn. And I think that when everybody saw that video from that liquor store, people automatically thought, well, obviously her husband didn't have anything to do with it. Look, they were joking around and he slapped her on the butt. Obviously, he looked like he really cared about everything. Well, that's a problem. Not that the police get it right all the time, but it looks like he did something to her. And it's a dang shame. And I don't know if we will ever, who knows if we'll ever find out exactly what happened. If he pleads guilty, then I don't think we're ever going to know. Now, if it goes to a trial, then we might. We don't know. But Andrea, I've learned just from knowing people in life, behind closed doors is a whole different world. Absolutely true, Andrea. Absolutely true. You do not know what goes on behind closed doors. A lot of people are making things look good. A lot of people are just trying to keep up with the Joneses. They're keeping up appearances so the neighbors don't talk, on and on and on. That's true. Totally true, Andrea. Holly, welcome tonight. Sorry, took a little while to get to you. Holly, welcome. And Hannah, how are you doing tonight, Hannah? I was just updating for all Holly and Hannah. I was just updating the viewers on Kitty Cat West's case where within the last week her husband was taken into the custody, I guess, for the murder of her, something that I don't think that we actually saw coming. I think people were thinking that, maybe she had some hot date with some guy she met online. Maybe she was, just to be blunt, maybe she was a prostitute, went out with some guy and something happened. It doesn't look like that's the case. It looks like her husband did it. So I wanted to update you all on that. Now, next, Diane, who is in the group tonight, she asked me if I was going to be talking about Timothy Cunningham, disappearance that seems like it's been going on for about 10 days now. At least seems like a while. And I do want to talk about that case at least a little bit. Let me just look here, though, for a second. Holly, thanks, Ed. Glad to see you. Loved the last episode of Unfound. Thank you. Rebecca's case, Rebecca Henderson-Polk, deeply appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. That was one that took a while to get going. I reiterated, if you watched the show last week, you knew I was going to talk about it. After the interview, you heard me talk about how a person I was introduced to through Janet, I found out was holding back on me, and I had an opportunity to talk about that. It's the first time that ever happened. So, Holly, I deeply appreciate it. Thank you. That's very kind. And Claudia, welcome tonight. Thank you for joining in. Thank you. So let's talk about Timothy Cunningham. He worked for the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. And I see that there's already a rumor mill going on out there, conspiracy theories. You know, he was working with vaccinations and, you know, some conspiracy. Maybe somebody made him disappear. And, you know, I don't buy into that stuff. You know that I don't. Holly says, I guess going back to Rebecca's case, I live here in Alabama, had never heard of her. Well, that's why Unfound exists, Holly, to let people know about some of these cases that tend to slip through the media cracks. That's why I'm here, just to be honest, just to be blunt. But Timothy Cunningham, we found out, I think, within the last few days regarding Timothy Cunningham from Atlanta, that shortly before he disappeared, that he had been turned down for a promotion. And it seems maybe even the exact same day that happened, he drove home and has been never seen again. I guess his car is there, his ID is there, his wallet's there, his phone's there. I'm not an expert on the case, but it seems like he just walked off. And, you know, those things, we have to forget that those things happen. Now, I don't know exactly his neighborhood. I'm going to guess that he doesn't live out in the middle of the woods. He lives in Atlanta. It's one of the largest metropolitan areas in the United States. Just hard to say. And Andrea says, she's not a conspiracy person either. And Rachel, thank you for joining in tonight. But if you don't know, speaking of conspiracy, what I was going to say is he worked on vaccinations, and something with vaccinations somewhere went wrong. And I know I'm not getting into this topic about vaccinations with autism and all of that. I'm not getting into that. But there are, I think, a couple conspiracy theory sites out there saying, well, he was made to disappear because he was going to be a whistleblower on all this. I haven't seen any proof of that. I know that there are going to be probably some podcasts that want to run with that. A lot of people are going to get a lot of airtime talking about that stuff. You know that's not what I do. I tend to look more at the mental side. What is the mental framework of that person? And you know, we have to look at, he seemed to think that he deserved to be promoted. He seemed to think it. Obviously, his superiors didn't. Now, see, what I might read into that is maybe they knew that he wasn't, you know, maybe they knew that he just wasn't, maybe he'd had some mental issues. And maybe this promotion just kind of pushed him over the edge. And maybe his superiors knew that, you know, we can't put that guy into that next higher position because, well, maybe he just has some issues. It's going to be too much stress on him. And maybe him not getting a promotion kind of proves them right, being that he didn't get this promotion and now he disappears. I don't know. I don't know. It's just a theory. I'm going to guess, but that him not getting that promotion and him disappearing, in some way they are related. I'm going to guess. Holly says, that is so scary that someone can drop off the face of the earth and no one knows where they are. Holly, every week when I do my show, Unfound, and all of you listen, and you know, I deeply appreciate it, I think the same thing every week. How is it possible that in a world of 7 billion people, here in the United States, which is where all but one of the cases I've covered have happened, you have 330 million people, you have cell phones, you have video cameras, you have people with their own cameras, you have cars that can be tracked. all of this information, all of these ways of tracking people, this Facebook, YouTube, all of it, and still people disappear. Excuse me for a moment. Let me turn the air conditioning off so you can hear me. Had to turn the air conditioning off. And really, the rate of disappearances here in 2018 is about the same as it was in 1970, where there were no video cameras, and there was no way to track people, and there was no social media or any internet. It's something that I really believe in doing Unfound for a year and a half, is that the understanding that we have in missing persons cases is completely in its infancy. Unlike, I think, murder cases where there are bodies and other types of different crimes where DNA has come along and things like that, forensics with DNA within the last 25 years, forensics, of course, probably going back 50, 60 years, hair fibers, things like that, fingerprints. It is matured. The investigation of outright murders and things like that has definitely matured. It has reached a higher level, and that's the reason I think that murder rates, at least in the United States, are way down since 1970. But disappearances are about the same. They are. And I still think that the way we investigate them, the way we study them, the way the media covers them is still in its infancy, and I think we have a long way to go. I think we are, when it comes to missing persons, we're very much, I think, like the investigation of murders. I'd have to say going way back, maybe even to the 1800s, is where I think missing persons cases and the understanding of them is right now. That's how far I think missing persons cases and the studying of them and the research of them is compared to murders. I don't know if I've ever said that before. I think about it often, but I don't know if I've ever said that before. Holly says, ever since I started listening to your podcast, I'm more aware of my surroundings. Always stay alert and aware. And Angela says, me too. Well, it's funny you should mention that, Holly, because something that I said last week I became a little bit of a meme over in the group. I said, you got to keep your head on a swivel. And it occurred to me that a lot of the listeners or the viewers from last week did not know what that meant. Or knew what it meant, but they hadn't heard it in a while or whatever. And so somebody posted that saying in the group this past week. I think it was Stephanie, now that I think about it. And so, yes, you have to keep your head on a swivel. And that's a saying that comes from football. You got to keep your head on a swivel in football so you don't get blindsided. That's the way it should be for all of us, both men and women, in all of our surroundings, coming out of work, coming out of a grocery store, coming out of a Starbucks, going into any of those places, getting out of your car to go into your apartment, your house. If you don't have a garage, you always need to have your head on a swivel and be aware. Andrew says, I love that saying. It's not original. I think that the first time I ever heard that was on the Jim Rome radio show. He's a sports guy. If anybody doesn't know, he has a nationally syndicated sports show. He's been around for a long time. I think he was the first guy that I ever heard say that. And I've just kind of picked up on it, and it has just worked its way into now my vocabulary when I'm using it to talk about missing persons cases and how to stay self-aware. So, yeah, that's where it came from. Kristen, thank you for joining me. It's so true, and always send a message to someone before you go anywhere. That's a good idea, too. Yeah. That you got to let people know where you are. And that does happen a lot. You're right, Kristen. In some of these cases, that people end up going places, they don't want people to know where they're going. And it costs them. It does. It costs them. That's another. And of course, I could cite many cases that Unfound is covered where people, I think, went to places they didn't want to tell anybody about, and those people disappeared. Many of the cases I've covered. Holly says, and this needs to be drilled in our young ones' heads. Absolutely. And Holly, I would say that it's even worse these days with phones. Everybody, with walking with their phones, texting, Snapchatting, Instagramming, everything else. We are, as humans go, whatever you believe in, whatever thinking you come from. Divine creation, evolution, I don't care. However long humans, we have never been more unself-aware or unaware of our surroundings than we are in the year 2018. Since Homo sapiens became something, humans have never been so unaware of their surrounding. It's because of technology. And, coming out and just going right to your phone. For you women, if a guy's stalking you or something like that, you're setting yourself up. Yeah. Holly, you're trying to talk your daughter into letting you put a chip in her. And she's 20. Holly, that's pretty funny. That's pretty funny, Holly. I don't know if we need to get to that. That's probably a little too big brother to me. I happen to believe that if we just use our own minds and, we're responsible for our own safety and, we just need to be aware. And, once again, I know that we chip animals these days to find out who they are and all of that. I think that's something that's different. I am not for chipping people. Now, if people want to voluntarily do that, I don't know what you can do about that. But it surely should not be something that should be mandated. Just once again, it's a little too being a George Orwell, an Orwell fan of his books. It's just a little too big brother for me. But I hear what you're saying. But I get the sentiment. Let me just put it that way. But back to Timothy Cunningham. I guess it's one point he made it the best 40 under 40 list. He was a kind of an up and comer in Atlanta. He wasn't just involved with the CDC, but he was involved with some charities and things. But I did read that he was acting strangely before he disappeared, even before he didn't get the promotion. So, you just don't know. Was he having some sort of mental issue? It's possible. And not getting that promotion simply pushed him over the edge. I think that we have to think of maybe that guy from a couple weeks ago who was in New York and then ended up in California. I don't know if we're ever going to find out what happened there. I'm highly suspicious of what happened. But if it was some sort of psychotic break, then we have to entertain that idea when we think about some of the disappearances like Timothy Cunningham's. We just have to accept that might be a possibility. So I'm not an expert on the case. I've read the stories just like you have. So I can't offer much more than that. Or Jill says, your husband says, or he was a spy, meaning Timothy Cunningham. Yeah, if you could really do it, I'd do it with my daughter. Holly, me too. Chip me because I'm missing. If I'm missing, I know you can find me. Husband, was Timothy Cunningham a spy? You mean a spy looking into what the CDC does? I'm going to say probably not, but I guess anything's possible. The reason I can't totally discount this, and I guess maybe I talked about this a while ago. This isn't even on the agenda, but so many of you are here now and watching. I need to pass this on simply because it comes into my head. Maybe some of you remember maybe 6 months ago, I had talked about my brother, who I live very close to here in Florida. He is a shoe salesman, and he was working with a guy who disappeared. That's true. And the guy, my brother had worked with him for a few years. The guy was originally, I think, from Ukraine, I think. Wasn't from Russia, but one of those satellite countries that used to be part of the Soviet Union. He had been in the United States for a long time. Well, he just up and disappeared. Just gone. Didn't look like he took anything and left his car and just totally vanished. Yeah, Holly, wow, I know, yeah. And just recently, he had a daughter who lived there. Just recently, he got back in contact with her. Like I said, it's been about 6 months. And being that Jill brings up being a spy, My brother Brian, he's fairly inquisitive like I am, very intuitive. And he and I have decided that we believe that this guy that my brother was working with was some kind of spy. And not one of these, KGB or anything like that. But, we've been hearing so much news, once again, not to get into politics, but about Russians getting involved in the election and then Russians, stirring up things with social media and then putting crowds together, political crowds together and everything. My brother and I we've convinced ourselves that this is what this guy was doing when he wasn't selling shoes. Because my brother found out that he'd been putting a lot of miles on his car. He lived very close to work where he worked, but then he was racking up all of these miles on his car, somebody told my brother. And we're pretty sure that he was doing something. No, Holley did not come back. He is over in Europe. No, he is over in Europe, Eastern Europe, or someplace like that. No, he is not back in the United States. But I have the understanding that he did call his daughter, who lives here, and told her that he's okay. But he fled this country. He up and left like that. My brother Brian said overnight, just completely overnight, he was gone. Didn't tell anybody where he was going, nothing. And we're pretty sure he was involved in something having to do with whatever the Russians or whoever was doing things here in the United States, something like that. Pretty sure. So no, Holley didn't come back. Becca, wow, I remember you telling the story. Well, this is a follow-up, Becca. I'm sorry it took me so long to follow up on that. But I never met him. I know he has a Facebook account, but I don't really want to give that out. But he is okay, but he fled the United States. He had lived here for a long time, and then just out of nowhere, he fled back. So we think that he was probably, because there have been stories here in Florida about some political rallies that went on during the 2016 presidential campaign that were probably financed by Russian operatives and things like that. We believe that this guy, his cover was that he was a shoe salesman, but this is what he was really doing. That's true. And the funny thing is, my brother had said, he always felt something. He was a good guy. My brother got along with him just fine. But, he always kind of felt there was maybe another side to him. And so there you go. So that's my story. So that's so 007. Yeah, I guess. But that's a real story. That's a totally real story, not making up. You know me. I'm not a BSer. I just call it like it is. But that actually happened. So when Jill says, well, maybe this Timothy Cunningham was a spy, I have to keep that in mind. I can't just totally dismiss it, because I even know within my sphere of people that I was just, I guess, 1 degree, or is it 2 degrees? I don't know how that works. 2 degrees away from somebody who was like that. That was doing something here, might have been being paid by a foreign government to organize, to go on social media, to do these things. And, and some of those people, we've been trying to track those people down in the United States. The FBI and other organizations, government organizations, have been trying to track them down. We believe this is the reason this guy got out of the country. So there you go. So hello, Emily. Thanks for joining. I mentioned you earlier. I was just talking about a Russian spy that we think my brother knows. So, and I didn't even have that on my agenda. So there you go. Beck, it's scary to think about that hiding in plain sight. That's true. In fact, I will tell you another story. This goes way back, though. This goes back to my Las Vegas days. Regarding that, living in Las Vegas, when I worked at Star Trek: The Experience, if some of you don't know, that's where I worked for 4.5 years. I had a good friend of mine, I'm not going to mention his name, but his wife worked at a bridal shop in Las Vegas, very well-known one. And, of course, weddings in Las Vegas, very popular. It turned out that there was a woman who started working there, a Russian woman who was working there, she turned out to be connected somehow, and she had to flee the country as well. That just hit me. I totally forgot all about that till right now. He told me that this woman was there, and this was like Russian mob or something. She was stealing customers' identifications and things, and then she fled the country. So there you go. That's another story. That must have been, I'm going to say that happened in about 2002, something like that. So there you go. We're getting all sorts of stories tonight, and these aren't conspiracy stories. These are real. And so, yeah, Lois, wow. So you never know what you're going to see. This is why you tune in. You never know what we're going to run into in these discussions. These are things that, of course, can't come up during the regular podcast, but just some of these things. So when we think about people disappearing, I guess we always have to keep the spy angle open. That's all I can say about that. That may not be his real name, and they're friendly. Joyce, that's a good point. Maybe this guy my brother knew, maybe that wasn't his real name. I don't know. I just don't know. It's kind of creepy, though. It's kind of creepy. Let's move on. We're in 42 minutes into this, and I may want to make sure that I cover this week's case. So you can all think about those things as you think about anybody else who's disappeared or anybody you've worked with in the past you thought was a little shady. Maybe they were a spy. I wanted to talk about what's going on in Nampa, Idaho. N-A-M, like Tampa with an N. These students at Boise State, it's a Society of Exploration Geophysicists. They're getting involved in a disappearance that happened in Idaho in 1964, the disappearance of Lillian Ritchie. And what they're going to be doing, they're going to be using ground penetration radar to go into, had something to do with a school district there, that a building was being put up, a huge complex was being put up for, I think, a school at the time that Lillian disappeared. And she lived close to this construction site. It was going up in 1964. They are going to be using ground penetrating radar and other things. They're going to be crawling into the foundation of this building to find out if she might be buried there. I don't know what the facts are of her disappearance. I don't know if they suspected that foul play was involved. I don't know anything about any of that. But all these years later, I guess 54 years later, this is what this group of kids, young people, I should say, are going to be doing. Dee Dee says, BSU, that's where you went to college. Well, Dee Dee, you should look into that. You should look into that story then, Dee Dee. Once again, the Boise State Society of Exploration Geophysicists, they're going to be taking this on over the next couple months of using ground penetrating radar, crawling on their hands and knees, going through this entire complex, the foundation of it, trying to find if anything, turns up, any weird, I guess, echoes that they get to see if she ended up in this construction site. So, with technology, yes, Holly, it's so amazing what they can do now. It's totally true. And it's good to hear that this woman, Lillian, has not been forgotten. And it's good that these young people are taking an interest. This is what needs to be done. I would actually like to see more colleges getting into this type of stuff. In fact, I have to admit, on top of everything that I do, I would love to do some sort of course either at USF, which is South Florida, or down here at Eckerd College, or and I live close to a couple colleges here. I'd love to do some sort of class on missing persons cases and researching them and everything. I mean, I would find that fascinating. I'm going to think about that, as if I have any time to do that. But when I hear about a college or university getting involved, I think that's fantastic. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I love reading stories about that. So Kristen says, I pray they find her. Holly, it's so amazing what they can do now. Yep. There's always hope. 26 years coming up in May. Answers, come at their time, not ours. That's true. Kristen thinks I'd be amazing. Well, you're very kind, Kristen. I do have a little bit of experience speaking colleges. I did speak at UNLV once. Didn't have anything to do with missing people, but I spoke there, and I also spoke at the Community College of Charleston, which is also in Las Vegas. When I lived there, I had a friend who were professors at each place. The talk I did at UNLV had to do with independent filmmaking, because I was an independent filmmaker at one time, just how to organize a crew and how to go about doing that. And then the other talk I did was I did a thing about public speaking. I got up, and being that I was an actor and having to speak in front of people and knowing how to improv and things, I was invited in to speak to a class about that. So I have some experience in that area, but that would be a lot of work. And I don't know if I need any more work right now, but I would love to do it. There's no doubt about that. I certainly feel that that is something where my talents lie. It's just there's just not enough hours in a day or days in a week. So Lillian Ritchie, maybe I'm going to have to look that case up. I would urge you all to look that up. Her last name is spelled Richey. Lillian Ritchie disappeared in 1964 from Nampa, Nampa, Idaho. So that takes us to our case for this week, this Friday. It's going to be the disappearance of Domonique Holley-Grisham. This is the second case that we have from Rochester. If you remember back in January, we covered the disappearance of Brian Sullivan. There's a possibility that this disappearance of Domonique could be related to Brian's. That's not what I believe. Okay, I want you to know that for the record. What I've looked into the case, of course, talking to Domonique some other couple times, doing some other things. I'm not convinced that Brian's and Domonique's cases are related, but they did disappear in the same area of Rochester. And there is the rumor that Domonique had a friend who knew the guy who is the prime suspect in Brian Sullivan's disappearance, that being Derek Murray. But I'm not convinced of that. The episode, if you don't know what happened, we'll just go through the facts very quickly. Domonique was 16 years old. He was a sophomore in high school. It was a Saturday. He was a very good hockey player, both on the ice and regular floor hockey. His team had won the championship that Saturday morning into the afternoon. His mother, Moselle, who is the interview for this episode, she is my guest, went out to buy things for a party that they were going to be happening at their house that evening. It was going to be a combination of winning this championship and Domonique's birthday, which had been in January. This happened, Kristen asks, when did this happen? He disappeared February 12th, 2009. So the case is just over 9 years old. But it was a Saturday, so Domonique gets home from winning this championship, and he knows there's going to be this party, so he starts putting like a song collection. He starts burning a CD of songs that are going to be played during this party. He gets a phone call. So his mother's out, and the only people who are home is a friend of the family who his mother really trusts and one of Dominique's younger brothers. Those two are home, and then there's Domonique. Their story, the younger brother and this friend of the family, say that Domonique got a phone call. And they don't know who he talked to. We still don't, to this day, don't know who called, because Domonique had one of those phones, that it was pay-as-you-go minutes. It wasn't like T-Mobile where all your records are kept. It was one of those phones where no records are kept, like a track phone that you can get at Walmart or whatever. And so to this day, we don't know who called him, but somebody called him, and they didn't. The guys that were there at the house didn't hear any of the conversation. All they know is that Domonique just walked out the door, didn't seem worried, didn't seem angry, didn't seem in a rush, nothing. In fact, they thought that he would be coming back inside in a few minutes to the house. He walked out the door and was never seen again. Completely disappeared. And you talk about, people, we were talking earlier how people can just walk out the door and disappear. This is one of those cases. He got a phone call from somebody, and he was gone. And the Rochester police, of course, were dismissive. They thought that he ran away. And I can tell you in this case, there is no chance that that happened. Something else happened. And I don't want to give too much away right now, but I happen to believe there is a huge discrepancy in this story. And I'm just what I've discovered. What the police discovered, that they've gone on the record, they discovered something about Domonique that happened shortly before he disappeared. And then I discovered that this certain person is telling a different story. And when I hear discrepancies that are so blatant like this one, I get suspicious. And that's what's going to be. We talk about it in the interview. You're going to hear it, and I want you to hear it directly from Moselle, Domonique's mother. And then my summation will be part of that. In fact, I don't talk about this enough, but the blog that I write at Patreon, that if you wanted to read it, it's $2 a month to be a Patreon supporter. If you want to read my even deeper thoughts, it'll be there. There's a huge discrepancy that I think points us in a direction for this disappearance. And that's the reason I don't believe it had anything to do with Derek Murray or Brian Sullivan's disappearance. I believe it had something to do with something else that was going on with Domonique. Melissa says, seemed like with technology today, they should be able to track monthly pay, track phones. You would think, but that's not the case. It's just not. We've had a few cases like this now where people have those phones, and I continue to find out that there is no way. It's not like me where I can go to the T-Mobile site and find out all of the people that I've talked to. It's not like that. It's just not. And that is and the reason people get those phones is because they're cheaper to use. With a lot of these plans, you have to get a credit check, and a lot of people can't get credit. They have bad credit. They can't get on a regular cell phone plan. So this is the reason they use. And probably for a young kid, maybe that cell phone that he had was, all he could do, and that's fine. But when it comes to finding missing people, those phones are the worst. They just are. They give up new information, and that's why a lot of those phones eventually find their way into drug dealers' hands. And Domonique was not involved in any of that. I just want to say that for the record. He wasn't involved in any of that. He was a good kid, doing well in school, good athlete, great relationship with his mother. That is not a factor in this disappearance at all, I don't think. Yep. Holly says, yep, if you're telling the truth, there's no reason to change your story. I agree. That's what we're going to get into in the episode. Very sad. Emily, I used to have straight talk. They don't keep records. See, Emily, you know that to be the case. And we're calling this episode that championship day because I'm kind of taking a cue from, if you've ever seen the Neil Simon play That Championship Season or seen the movies that have come out. And that's a movie where all of these guys get together to kind of, talking about their heydays and how they won, I think it was a basketball championship, and how things just don't go right. They get together and none of their lives have really gone the way that they thought they were going to go. It was a movie, I think it came out in 1982, but it was originally a play, a Neil Simon play, and it had Paul Sorvino in the movie, it had Martin Sheen in the movie, Bruce Dern was in the movie. And so it was a big movie with some real, well-known people. But the movie or the play was called That Championship Season, about these athletes getting back together with their coach, their old coach, to talk about that championship season and how things don't go exactly the way they thought they were going to go. And so I'm calling this episode That Championship Day because that day, a great day, probably one of the best days in Domonique's life, didn't go the way that I guess he thought it was going to go, and surely did not go the way they thought it was going to go for the rest of his family, his mother, his father, and his brothers, and all his extended family. So that's what the episode is called, that championship day, because Domonique won that championship that day, and on the same exact day he disappeared. And Andrea says, good movie. You've seen it. It is. It's a really good play, a really good story, and I would urge anybody, I doubt it's on Netflix, but if you can find it somewhere, it's called the movie called That Championship Season. It's really good. Kind of puts a lot of things in perspective about being a young person, being maybe a former athlete, reliving your heyday. It's really good. So, Jimmy, Jimmy, thank you. It's very kind that you say that. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ed, for what you do. I deeply appreciate it, Jimmy. Thank you. So that's The Disappearance. The Disappearance of Domonique Holley-Grisham in Rochester, New York, February 12th, 2009. The episode is called That Championship Day. So I talked about feeling a little lethargic. I hope I did all right for all of you tonight. Kind of had to fight through it. Talked about triblive.com. Please go there. Please check out the article that Stephen Huba did on the disappearance of Tony Lynn McNatt Chiappetta. He went and met her sister, a woman I got to talk to on the phone. Please check it out if you haven't yet. We talked about the business stuff, volumes 1 and 2 on Amazon. We talked about the T-shirts. We talked about makeplayingcards.com. We talked about the Patreon account. If you'd like to start reading the blog that I'm writing there, it's an analysis of each, much more in-depth analysis than I get into the program, because I don't like doing theorizing on the program. I just don't. I don't think that is the proper place to do that. But I will write the things down because people ask for it, but I'm not going to do that on the podcast. The podcast is strictly a news show. Strictly a news show, presenting facts and those things. So if you want to join at patreon.com for $2 a month, you can read the blog and you'll get a free ebook on top of that. We talked about Kitty Cat West and how it seems her husband is in custody. We talked about Timothy Cunningham, the guy who disappeared from the CDC. We talked about what the students are doing at Boise State regarding trying to find out what happened to Lillian Ritchie, a woman who disappeared in Nampa, Idaho in 1964. We talked about my brother being friend with probably some sort of spy. We talked about a story that I have from Las Vegas, a friend of mine knowing a woman who was probably in the Russian mob or something. And then we finally talked about, previewed the disappearance of Domonique Holley-Grisham, who disappeared in Rochester, New York. And we're going to, that'll be Friday. His mother is the guest. And I appreciate her being on the program. And, you'll have to decide for yourself what you think happened. We're just going to present the facts. And like I said, you are the ones who get to decide. You don't need me to come up with all these theories, although I have a theory. I like to just present the facts, and you just come to your own conclusions. You're all smart people. Yes, Emily. Emily is my assistant. She's telling me to call her when I'm done. Yes, Emily, I will call you. Greg, that's why I like your podcast. You stick to the facts. I appreciate that. Thank you, Greg. Melissa, first time watching you live. Enjoyed this. Thank you. Melissa, I'm here every Wednesday night that you took some time out of your evening to watch. I deeply appreciate it. Thank you for giving me some of your time tonight. If there's nothing else, I'll be signing off for tonight. Once again, Friday, the episode will come out at 2 p.m. Eastern in the United States, and it'll be on Podomatic.com, it'll be on triblive.com, and then a little while after that, iTunes and some other apps that I know all of you use. You will hear me then on Friday, and this is always my favorite time of the week, getting to interact with all of you. You've been watching the Unfound live show on Facebook, and I hope you all have a beautiful night and a beautiful rest of the week. Good night.